The Trump administration under fire on many fronts tonight. House Democrats just marched out of this unusual briefing by Trump officials, blasting it as propaganda aimed at diverting this impeachment probe. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Pompeo now openly admits he was on Trump's collusion call. And while Congress is technically on recess, today showed more starkly than ever how things are changing with this scene. Speaker Pelosi, you see here, walking out to the lectern, showing she's in this fight. She's in the lead, and she's making clear who the Democrats are positioning as the top prosecutor in any case against Trump. Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff. It's his committee that did what so many other Democrats and Trump critics have not to date, and it was Schiff who joined Pelosi in this unified front today.
We do place ourselves in a time of urgency on the threat to the Constitution.
Any effort by the Secretary, by the President, or anyone else to interfere will be considered as evidence of obstruction.
We see the actions of this president being an assault on the Constitution. We had no choice but to go forward.
We're not fooling around here.
A stark warning to a president who's long claimed he welcomes impeachment, that it would help him politically. Well, today, the president did not seem to be celebrating the march towards this as some kind of political boost. He wasn't taunting House Democrats to finish the job, which is what someone would say if they wanted to be impeached. No, the president personally attacked Chairman Schiff and advocated, and I say this explicitly, he advocated two separate potential crimes in his remarks today. The advocacy of exposing the whistleblower against federal law, and the advocacy of a treason investigation of a member of the opposition party.
We don't call him Shifty Schiff for nothing. He's a shifty, dishonest guy. He made up my conversation. He actually made it up. It should be criminal. It should be treasonous. Frankly, they should look at him for treason. This country has to find out who that person was, because that person's a spy. But you people should be ashamed of yourself. Okay, I think I've answered most of your questions. What do you think? Yes?
He did not answer most of the questions. In fact, at a press conference today, a Wire reporter in the room confronted the president over ducking the core question of whether Donald Trump sought illegal help to target Joe Biden. More evidence of a fact that we've noted on this show since this whole story broke open. The president has gone from 2 years of no collusion to being, in public, pro-collusion, admitting that was the request on the Ukraine call and declining basic opportunities to deny it. Today, he trashed Biden without denying that he requested that collusion.
Look, Biden and his son are stone cold crooked, and you know it.
Welcome to 2020. Trump insists, I guess, anyone running against him is crooked, while Speaker Pelosi says the real news here is that Donald Trump is scared.
I think the president knows the argument that can be made against him, and he's scared. And so he's trying to divert attention from that to we're standing in the way of legislation.
Now, that's just some of the top news on this huge story right now, and we haven't even gotten to Joe Biden's new response or the pressure on Giuliani to say whether he even is Donald Trump's lawyer, or to some Trump cabinet officials like Rick Perry who say they will be more cooperative with Congress than other parts of Trump's government. Those are stories breaking today, as well as this New York Times report crossing the wire with new details on the lengths the whistleblower went to get incriminating information to Congress. So let's take a moment to mark where we are in this story right now. The Ukraine scandal has clearly upended the Trump administration, unlike anything we've seen since the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller. The Democrats are now marching towards something that Pelosi had long resisted. And I got to tell you, as we try to make sense of all this, just watching her today, it is clear now a vote on impeaching Trump looks more likely. Pelosi is narrowing the options of any kind of D.C. off-ramp when she publicly names the president an urgent threat to the Constitution, and when her caucus is prepping these new impeachment subpoenas from, count them, 3 different committees today and setting new deadlines for the end of this week. And then there is the president's response. You need to know this. He's not denying the core evidence that he sought foreign help to try to criminally take out a domestic rival. He stands accused of abusing his power to target domestic opponents and responds by threatening to target his domestic opponents. Let me repeat that, because we are in grave territory. one of the most consequential things the president is now doing is that he faces potential impeachment for criminally targeting a top domestic rival, Joe Biden. And he is responding right now, today, by threatening to criminally target another domestic rival, Adam Schiff, who is, of course, leading one of the probes into Trump targeting Biden. This is not a drill. This is a test in real time right now of our constitutional system of government. And remember, many thought the test would come during the Mueller probe because Trump ousted 2 FBI directors and attempted to obstruct the probe. But here's the thing about why that went down differently. It's something that you know as a news viewer about Bob Mueller. He sticks to the book. He doesn't lean into testing our system of government. He didn't demand the president sit for an interview, and he didn't recommend impeachment, as other prosecutors investigating presidents have done. And so that test, it never came. Well, legal experts say that was a mark of fairness and restraint by Mueller. But the Ukraine call notes show Donald Trump didn't see it that way. We know from his own White House, he told the Ukraine prime minister the day after Mueller testified that Mueller gave a, quote, incompetent and poor performance. Trump didn't wait a week or a month. It was the very next day that he hatched this new collusion plot. And unlike Mueller, whatever you think of Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, and he has his fans, many of them across the country, something we know about him that people agree on, Donald Trump does lean into testing this system of government. He's doing it right now. And that makes what comes next very, very significant. I turn now to Democratic Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner, and Mark Thompson, host of the Make It Plain podcast. Congresswoman, when you see the president blatantly respond to accusations that he targeted domestic rivals with the targeting of other domestic rivals, including your colleague Adam Schiff, do you see this as approaching a constitutional crisis?
Not only that, but I actually worry when the president targets somebody that Adam Schiff has gotten death threats. He puts people in danger, including potentially the whistleblower, who he certainly wants to disclose and disclaim. So it's on many fronts, it is really dangerous and serious. But, you know, Ari, when you were going through it, it's not only trying to undercut
I'm going to let you continue, but just on the news of that reference you made, is that something you learned from Congressman Schiff or his staff themselves?
I absolutely heard it from, yes, not from Adam directly, but I know that is actually a fact, that he has received death threats. This isn't the first time when the president has targeted people that's the outcome.
I ask you that because, as you know, we're dealing with very serious matters. The congressman made reference to it as well. So for your response, take a listen to how he put this, what he viewed as the president's incitement of violence today.
Okay.
Let's not make any mistake here. The president wants to make this all about the whistleblower and suggest people that come forward with evidence of his wrongdoing are somehow treasonous and should be treated as traitors and spies. This is a blatant effort to intimidate witnesses. It's an incitement to violence.
Congresswoman?
Yes, I mean, the president does that. He doesn't hesitate to do that. The kind of tweets that he put out time after time today, there were, I don't know if there were quite a dozen of them, but it seemed like that, just degrading and using profane language and going after people. My hope is that the American people look at that and say, this is the way the president of the United States talks, and this is the kind of activity that he would encourage, going after people. And I think it is right to say that he incites violence. After all, he said that it could be a civil war if he were impeached. What is he talking about? And traitors and spies, that, you know, what happens to them? Clearly, he was talking about capital murder.
Glenn?
You know, Ari, I loved your opening segment because you hit the nail right on the head and you called out what's going on here. The president being accused of criminally targeting opponents is defending himself by criminally targeting opponents. And if I can riff on that for a minute,
sure.
He is also, I believe, not just normalizing crime, but he's trying to convert confessions to exculpations. When he, in the first instance, commits, I think, what we all recognize as the mother of all campaign finance violations by holding hostage congressionally appropriated funds that are designed and destined to go to Ukraine to protect Ukraine from unlawful Russian aggression. He wrongfully uses it as a bargaining chip and says, oh, I know this money's supposed to go to you. I know you want to buy more Javelin missiles to protect yourself and your people, but I have a favor I need, though. And then he goes on TV, Ari, and he brags about how that confession is a perfect conversation and a beautiful conversation. Let me just finish up by saying it really is, to take his hypothetical, as if he goes out onto Fifth Avenue, shoots somebody, and then brags that, oh, this was a perfect shooting, got him right through the heart, didn't even suffer. This was a perfect, beautiful shooting on Fifth Avenue. He's turned everything on its head.
You both lay it out in the seriousness of it, and I want to play a moment here, Mark, for you, when you think about what is being done through what is left of the president's exposure to an investigative questioning. I mentioned Mueller didn't question him. They've shut down a lot of the briefings. He only does certain types of media. But there is still a system. And so you see in these questions and answers that he will not even deny what is, according to the Democrats, a potentially impeachable offense. Take a look.
The question, sir, was what did you want President Zelensky to do about Vice President Biden and his son Hunter?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up of what I just asked you, sir.
Listen, you ready? We have the president of Finland. Ask him a question. I've given you a long answer. Ask this gentleman a question. Don't be rude.
No, sir, I don't want to be rude. I just wanted you to have a chance to answer the question that I asked you.
I've answered everything. It's a whole hoax. And you know who's playing into the hoax? People like you.
As mentioned, he used to say no collusion. What does it tell you that this time, for his strategy, he's not going that far?
No, and unfortunately, I think he felt vindicated by Mueller and got some notion that what he did, which many of us still think was some form of collusion, was okay. So he can do the same thing in this Ukraine scenario. He is looking more and more like Richard Nixon. But at least Nixon's excuse was that he was drunk a lot of the times. Trump doesn't even drink. The other thing he said in that press conference the other day is very important. What we got was a readout, or shall we say a summary of the call, which he has admitted to. But today he said the great stenographers, word for word, comma for comma. So is there a verbatim transcript or recording of this call or others? Now, he's admitted to this collusion, but if you cop to a crime like this one, there, you know, and Glenn's prosecutor criminal, so he knows this better than me. If you cop to one thing, what you aren't copping to might be something even worse. So is he admitting that there's a transcript or audio of this full call, if not other calls where he's carrying out some of the same behavior or worse? And that further makes it exposes him in any ongoing investigation. Sure, he's scared. And I'll say one other thing, too. I'll go on a limb and say, while it may not look like Republican elected officials will do as they did with Nixon and turn on him, let's be clear. This is a man who took over a party, and many of them resented him at first. He wasn't the person that was chosen to be their nominee. He took over the party, ran down all of their dozen or more candidates, and has been running it ever since. Some of these Republican elected officials, including senators, have their own political ambition, Ari. So if it gets too tight, they may back away from him themselves.
And that goes to why we're in a different place than we were 2 weeks ago. Right. And I don't know that I wouldn't have predicted this. I'm not in that business. I don't know that any of our expert panelists would have known, because the facts evolve. And so what the Senate may or may not do later, I think, is up to the Senate. Congresswoman, we began the broadcast talking about the test of the system. You mentioned that you know on good authority your assertion that Congressman Schiff has faced death threats. My question to you on the larger questions facing this president and Speaker Pelosi, who's out at work today while you all are technically in recess, is, do you see anything that Donald Trump is doing now as a potential for additional articles of impeachment? If he is threatening, as you say, members of Congress with prosecution, if he is contributing, as Congressman Schiff says, to inciting violence, could that itself add to the list?
It could, but don't you, Ari, want to know what are the other conversations in that secret where they were hidden on a server? Conversations he probably had with Vladimir Putin, maybe other foreign leaders, where he was trying to make similar deals. Clearly, this conversation was one that worried the people around him enough that they wanted to squirrel away. They wanted to hide. They wanted to cover up this conversation. We think that this server has a lot of others, and I think we need to see them, and this will just reinforce the notion that Donald Trump will sacrifice our national security in order to go after an opponent, and that he will threaten any opponent who questions him. And I think all of those are impeachable offenses.
Congressman Schakowsky, thank you. Glenn and Mark, thanks for joining me. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.